Good morning, Sir Sam. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
My first question is fairly easy. Why did you join the cooperative?
Well, in the early 60s, I happened to work with church leaders, and most of our meetings we go to the extent of discussing socio-economic and political situation of the country, sort of an analysis. But there we discussed that there is so much gap between the rates of food. And it so happened that there was already a group going into cooperatives organizing the development. And I was invited. And from then on, I was so convinced that cooperatives is one of the best remedies to address the economic situation of the country.
To some who acquire deeper understanding about cooperative, said that cooperative is a way of life. Do you share the same view about this?
Yes, because when we first thought about why, it's the reason of organizing cooperatives. There were certain values, philosophies, and the principles that those who were organizing cooperatives in 1800s are still being followed up to now. So it's a way really of life because once you have to accept this principle, you have to live by it. So, like say for example, it is a way of trying to set paradigms when it comes to how you manage your economy personally. So it will always be a way of life.
So, how long have you been a volunteer to the co-op?
About 4 decades.
4 decades. What do you decide to devote your time to the cooperative without expecting something in return? Sir?
Well, you see, when I started from the church. It was so clear to me that there is an importance of understanding about stewardship, and second is about the importance of being a servant. So that's where it also started, because without these two elements, you will never understand the value of volunteerism.
So, as one of the volunteers in the cooperative for many years, how do you define volunteerism?
Well, as I have said, to me it's servanthood, and basing that biblically, being being a servant, but at the same time possesses certain quality of leadership. As Jesus said, if you want to become a leader, you must serve first. That should be the basis of servanthood. And second is, it's about stewardship. It's trying to take care of what God has created. And then these are the two elements that is very, very important in trying to look into areas of how could you become an effective volunteer. It's really serving people.
How do you relate volunteerism to cooperativism?
The essence of working together entails much volunteerism, because one of the principles of cooperative that we are following, it is democratic, and in democracy nobody is being forced to do something. So that's why cooperative believes in the principles of education, because you have to convince people to do their work without being forced, without being intimidated. So that's where volunteerism and cooperativism would jive together. There is so much relationship with the spirit of volunteerism to the principles of cooperativism.
That's a good point, sir. How important is volunteerism to the cooperative concept as a whole?
It is very important because cooperative, which deals with the principles also, or the value of self-help. There's so much the experience of volunteerism. So it is so important that you have to understand this value and this principle, because self-help can only be as a way of life, can only be understood if you are going to go deeper into the areas of volunteerism and cooperativism, being an economic activity. So it's really very important.
As a family man, was there a time when your being a volunteer to the co-op became an issue to your family?
There was so much issue about me working with the co-op because somehow, and as you may have noticed if you would like to talk to some leaders, there is that competition between the co-op and the family. Which comes first? Sometimes most members of the family would feel that they are the second important people given consideration as a family. But you see, when you try to look at the sphere of uh, the work of the cooperative, it's very difficult for us to convince if we cannot allow our families to see the result. It is always on the result. That's why for cooperative leaders, becoming models is something that we have to show to them. Unless you can show that there is positive result of working with people, the family will never believe us.
So they've seen positive results.
Yes, because somehow in our little works we have seen people's life changing in the areas of economy. So that's why we can also see that what we are working is something very important, and we can also see changes in people's lives. That's the only way to convince the family.
To have served the co-op as a volunteer for many years, can you say that being a volunteer brought you happiness despite the sacrifices?
Well, of course, if you, as people will say, no pain, no gain. So I think it goes down to that. Meaning, it becomes meaningful if you can feel the pain. Because working with people is not an easy work. And with that, we can see the fulfillment. If you can see people improve their lives, change their point of view as people working together. So, for me, this is something more than that pain, more than the pain that you can feel. Is people's satisfaction. And that by that, it will become fulfillment for us to work more seriously in the co-ops.
On the other hand, sir, can you say that the economic situation today affects the level of participation of others in the concept of volunteerism?
There is a very big gap between understanding between economic situation and volunteerism. That is why it is more important that we have to work harder and have more time to volunteer. Because as we see, there is no other way that this gap can be ended. It is only through the work of volunteerism, because you can never develop something when you are not going to work freely and to volunteer first. Because if you are to organize the cooperative and then you think of remuneration, it will never succeed. So it is very important as a foundation, but it will not be that forever. There will only be a level of volunteerism as the cooperative will grow. Because later on, it can already afford to pay or give back sort of a little honorarium of remuneration. That's what we can expect. But first, the principles of giving first before you can get something out.
So, in relation to this, sir, how do we encourage others to do the volunteer job, considering that the economic situation?
It will depend deeply because if you are convinced that this is the only way, then how we work will be a means of convincing them. Because there is no amount of words that can encourage them. It is only the result of what you are doing that can convince others to do the same. So, in short, it is very important to become models in this kind of work.
Personally, sir, how does being a volunteer deepen your commitment to the cooperative movement?
Well, the basis really of my joining the cooperative and becoming a volunteer is my passion. Uh, and second is, I have learned that somehow in the point of life you have to understand that you have a purpose in being here. And it's very, very clear to me that my purpose in being here on earth is to serve. And maybe to some others, they are also more convinced that it is service that is very important. That is why we have sort of areas in our heart to work with people and to volunteer. It is really what Jesus Christ said. Serve my people.
How did the spirit of volunteerism transform you as a person?
Well, this is kind of a humbling work. Because when you teach people, you all have to show that this is the way of your life. Because it is easier for them to see what you're doing rather than for them to listen what you say. So that's the principle that I have followed. And I think to some effect it is somewhat effective also to other lives of people.
So, are you really that happy now that you have served the cooperative for so many years and you have been a volunteer for so many years?
Well, I don't think somebody can continue working as a volunteer for more than 40 years if he is not happy. Otherwise, so I think basically I'm really happy in my 40 years.
So, does cooperative really add meaning to your life, sir?
Of course, it did. It did because
Why?
it is somehow in a way you share your life that it can also be meaningful. It is because in volunteer work, as I have said, servanthood, it is really sharing.
Some observe that you are a silent actor in the co-op movement. But deep inside, how do you like to be remembered as a person?
Well, I think it would be okay for me if people remember me as a simple family man. Somebody who had been trying so hard to work with people and have contributed something to change their lives. Um, Meaning to say is, if I could be remembered that I one of those who have touched lives, I would be happy with it.
So, as a cooperative man, sir, how do you like to be remembered?
Well, I think I should be remembered as a simple man who tried his best to serve fellow men.
So, that's all. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you also for this interview.